direct from the web, it's Billy Masters Live. And now, please welcome your host, Billy Masters.
Welcome, everyone, to a special Billy Masters Live cocktail hour. I may suggest that you grab yourself a drink. Grab a bottle. This could be a while. Oh, my God. So, it's been a while, and we have a very special reason to be back. Oh, thank you. Somebody in the booth is on top of things. Today is Monday, October 2nd, 2023. We always say this for the archivists, that you know what's going on in the world. So New York had those floods last week. Boston was rainy and miserable, and it's beautiful. It's like 75 out tonight. Before I start the show, let me just tell you, I will be in Las Vegas at Las Vegas Pride this coming weekend, but Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I get in town Wednesday. Why do you get in town Wednesday, Billy? Because I was supposed to see Dita Von Teese's opening night, and she has canceled. You know, the things you can catch while bathing in a martini glass. I can't even tell you. You don't want to go to your rapid care for that. Thursday night, I will be going to see Varla Jean Merman at the Westgate. No, she is not in the Barry Manilow room. She's in the comedy club, and I've never been there, so I'm very excited. So if you're in Vegas, please come to the show. Varla is at the Westgate Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday night, I think it's sold out already, but Kathy Griffin is at the Mirage, so I will be at the Mirage. And then Friday night is the Pride Parade. I think it's like at 7 or something. Kathy's at 10, and Saturday is the festival. Okay? Just so you know. Then I'm going to be in Los Angeles the week after, and I'll tell you where I am. I should just tell you. Go to billymasters.com if you want to know where I am, or to read the column. It's free. It's free. You know what is not free is the book. See? Do you see? That's the segue. I know. That's why I make no money. What is not free is this fantastic book. It's called Leading Lady, the memoir of a most unusual boy. So those of you who watch this show regularly know, someone in the booth, what number show is this? I know we're in the 3rd season or 4th season, but calculate, because I'm curious what number this is. Charles Busch was on the very first episode of Billy Masters Live. Did you know that, Charles? Charles looks aghast, possibly agog. Now, yes, there were 2 or 3 like preview shows, like all good theater, we have previews. But yeah, he was my very first guest, and he has this fantastic memoir out. He has a better image. There it is. But I'm going to tell you something. If you want to know a little bit more, and in a kind of raucous way, find Whores of Lost Atlantis. It is a fantastic... I take Whores of Lost Atlantis out. I should just leave it there. Where am I? Hello, I'm here with the whores. That way. I take Whores of Lost Atlantis out at least once a year and read it and laugh. I have the most fun reading this book. I've got 3 copies of it. Said if I want to read it at any of my little homes, I read it. But we're not promoting that because he doesn't get any money for that. Leading Lady, a memoir of a most unusual boy, is out now. It is a fantastic read. And it is, can we get rid of everything? Thank you. And it is funny, poignant, relatable. Here's the most surprising takeaway from this book, is how relatable it is to anybody. And we'll talk about that up at the top. If you want to be like an accountant, you may not believe this. It's relatable. And I will explain why in a moment. Now, I would love to typically do a great introduction for Charles, but I decided to let someone else do the introduction. So let me pass the mic over to Beyond the Grave.
But Charles Busch is such an amazing man. He truly deserves the Legend Award, which is what the award is called. He's an actor, he's a playwright, he's a trailblazer, a Tony nominee, won at Sundance Best Performance Award, a Drama Desk Award for career achievement, known within the theater community as a wonderful, kind, nice, generous, smart, relevant. Everyone I was asking, give me one word for Charles. And, humorous. Also, I wanted to add great humanity. If you've ever seen some of his movies, there's great humanity, there's great pathos, because he's been through a lot that a lot of your scholarship people are just learning what they're going to have to go through in life. And Charles not only took his life, but turned it around and made drag into an art form, which I think is an amazing thing to do. It gives me great joy that you are my darling. It gives me such joy to give this to you, because I love you so much. And you truly, besides are a great friend, you're a great artist. So with joy, I give you this award.
All right, let's bring out the fabulous, the legendary Charles Busch. Okay, come on, Joan. There's got to be an early bird special someplace. Hello, darling.
Oh my boy, you had to show that. I get so choked up whenever I see her. I love.
So does she.
It was a very emotional night for both of us.
And let me tell you, I mean, you know this, but people don't know this. Everyone asked Joan to do things like that, and she rarely did it, and she only did it if she could be sincere. She wouldn't just show up to like talk and get a free meal. She had to really care for the person, love them, and believe in them. And so that is a great honor.
Yeah, well, it was. I couldn't believe I was getting a Legend Award from her. She should have received a Legend Award every single day of the year, as far as I was concerned. Yeah. I don't think she ever got an award for anything, ever.
Well, she got the Daytime Emmy. That was it.
Okay, well, thank God for that.
Yeah. You know, I want to talk about your book. First off, thank you for being here. You are somebody who is never, I don't think you've ever said no to me. I do remember when Lainey Kazan canceled with Michelle Lee the first time we tried it, and I called you at like 11:45, and you said, "Who canceled?" And you were there for me, and who better with Michelle Lee than you? But thank you. I appreciate not only you being here for me, but our friendship, because that means a lot to me.
And I forgot that I was your first guest. So there's wonderful symmetry.
Yeah, really. Oh, good. So we're done. All right, this is it. But I want to. Leading Lady. It's a great book. And what I want to talk about is the relevance. You know, there were things, and I knew some of this from Whores of Los Atlantis, which is fictional, somewhat fictionalized, that really you knocked around. You were not an overnight sensation. You took a long time to find your way. You worked as a temp when you had to. You worked as a hooker when you had to. You worked as a go-go boy when you had to, which we'll get to, but led to a great opportunity. But you really are an example that you just, I hate to say it, you just say yes. And you scramble for whatever is out there.
Well, yes, and you just kind of, when you're trying to, make it or figure out how to do it, you just keep just taking whatever possibilities are out there, and you can't say no, because what else is there?
Well, it seems to me, and you mentioned it several times in the book, that one thing that you never were lacking was confidence. In the sense, now you may not have had it in every moment, but you really believed in yourself. You believed you were special. You believed that you were going to be great, and what was taking everyone else so long?
Well, I really felt just that if I just kept at it, just like a horse with blinders on, just kept at it, was never distracted away from some sort of, well, my goal was to earn a living, was not to, have my own TV show or win an Oscar, just to earn a living in theater. And I just kind of thought that if I just kept at it and kept getting better, if I kept learning and growing and just wasn't distracted, that somehow I would earn my living.
Did you think that you had, I mean, at the time, you talk on reflection that some of the things you were going in the wrong direction. But at the time, was there ever something you did that you thought to yourself, this is a mistake? I know it.
No. I guess
I mean, that's great.
The things, I don't know. Like even in the past 15 years, I've had this new career that's kind of ending.
Chanteuse.
Yes, as a cabaret entertainer. And my friend Tom Judson and I, we traveled to 37 cities in 4 countries over the past 12, 15 years. And even there, I was like Madame Rose and Gypsy. I booked the act, in different countries, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And, I don't ask enough questions. It's kind of my fatal mistake. I don't ask enough questions. I just throw myself into it. And there were a number of times where we would show up in Paris. In Paris, very glamorous, but it turned out that I didn't know, since I don't speak French, that on the flyer, I thought it said shows at 8 and 11. It meant 8 to 11. And it turned out that we weren't like there doing our act. We were just in a restaurant, in a very small cafe. Just,
the entertainment.
We were just like, the lounge person, and it was this tiny little room. And now I could have been all huffy and weird, but we were in Paris and it was a beautiful room. And so I thought, well, maybe I could just pretend that I'm in an old 40s movie where Rita Hayworth, it's always interesting, those movies where the performer gets up and does one song and then she goes right into a scene with Glenn Ford. It's like, what kind of act is this? She's only doing one song. So I thought, well, I'll do that in this cafe, since people weren't showing up at 8 o'clock to see a show. They were just coming in drips and drabs when they wanted dinner. And so I started off just standing by the bar, being very Dietrich, and I started singing my song at the bar. And then I had no microphone because it was so tiniest little room. And then I I think I had my appetizer. And then after I finished my appetizer, I got up and some more people came in. So I sat down at somebody's table, and sang my ballad to them. Then I had my entree. I came back. Somebody else walked in. I sat at their table, sang another sad song. And it was really kind of marvelous. But, lesson to be gleaned to myself, just, don't get all worked up and just throw yourself into it and see maybe something fun. At least you'll get a good story out of it. I've thrown myself into a lot of situations just because I wanted to tell it to Julie Halston.
Who is going to join us soon.
Yeah, but I just thought, this is good. I don't know if I want to do this, but it's going to make such a great story to tell Julie on the phone. I'll just go ahead and do it.
I'll say that, so that is a quality that we share and that a lot of performers share, that when something horrible happens, you think, this is really horrible, but it's going to be a really funny story.
It also helps if you're with somebody. When I was starting out my career as a solo performer, because, it's funny that I ended bookending traveling around, because for the first 8 years of my career, I was doing these solo monologues and booking myself at tiny nonprofit theaters around the country, but I was all by myself, and that could be really upsetting when you show up and you're just at the mercy of some odd establishment who doesn't know what to do with you, and they're just kind of like, okay, you can dress in the hallway, or you can, we don't have anybody to do your lights and sound, but there's a girl who just volunteered to be an usher, so we'll, maybe she can help you figure out how to turn the lights on. When you're by yourself, it's very upsetting and depressing. And what am I doing here? And, is this, this isn't at all what they promised and all that. But, when you're traveling with someone, so when I did it again with Tom Judson, and we're together, all these, we could be, we were stuck in Sitges, Spain, beautiful place, but it turned out that we were booked in a jazz club that had been closed for the last 40 years. and they never told anyone that it was open. But if I'd been alone, I might have thought, oh God, I went all the way here to Spain, and there's 6 people are going to show up, and that's just because they happen to be working there. But with Tom, we were laughing. We got to, it was just really fun, and we were in Spain together, and so it makes a difference.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I like the structure of your book because you and I have talked about this over the years so many times that you're doing it. And I know that you really, I don't want to say you struggled, but you bounced around between different formats. And you found this way that is sort of conversational, that we all tell a story and then say, oh, but that reminds me, I'll get back to this, but that reminds me of this.
Yeah.
And then, okay, now where was I? I mean, at some point you just say, okay, and it might be a page and a half aside, and then sometimes it might be a longer aside, but it's very you. Was that hard? Was that easy?
No, I've worked on this book for almost 14 years, to be quite honest.
It's amazing.
Off and on. And I had many different structures. I came into it not knowing, how I wanted to tell the story. I just thought I had some good stories to, throw down on paper. And, I tried at one point doing a linear book where, chapter 1, I am born, and then I get frustrated when I read books where, it takes forever to get to the sexy part or the famous people. And, because there are chapters on their ancestors and their parents and their, and then the long childhood and adolescence. So I kind of thought it'd be interesting to, first start more in the present, flash back. It's rather cinematic, and then there is kind of a chronological line, through it. But then I go off on tangents. Like for instance, I guess the best example would be when I talk about how my aunt, who raised me, began taking me to Broadway shows when I was 8, and I say, well, among the shows we saw was Carol Channing and Hello Dolly, which then makes me think about when I shared a dressing room with her in 1995. But then I go back to being 9 years old. So there is a logic to it, I hope.
Yeah, there definitely is. But what's really predominant in the book are the women in your life. I mean, your father figures somewhat. My favorite quote was when you said that at one point he said to you, he found himself oddly attracted to the women you played. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what to do with that.
I didn't either. My father he was a character, and and really, I hope he doesn't come off too badly in the book. I think I was pretty fair. It's just my father was an eternal 17-year-old basically. But like a lot of 17-year-olds, a lot of fun and very affectionate and always encouraging, never critical, but he just was not the most dependable person and just not that really emotionally involved as maybe a 17-year-old would be.
Yeah. But from the very beginning, you talk about mother figures, and you've had so many, and you're as you mentioned, your Aunt Lil was mother and father at a certain point. Certainly a mother figure initially, but at a certain point took over the entire parental unit. And thank God for her, because I wonder, with you left to your father, for instance, what would have happened to you?
Well, I tell you, she just really saved my life because, my mother died when I was 7, and I was living in suburbs of New York, Hartsdale, and I really had drifted. And so by the time I was 14, I really was, flunking out of school and just not functioning. And so then my aunt, who I'd always been close to, I'd always spent weekends with her all my life, but at this point, she stepped in and had me move in with her full time in Manhattan, and had to, she had to get me to pass these courses so I wouldn't be left back. And it was really kind of lessons in life, and lessons in discipline, lessons in concentration, basic things, lessons in just figuring out how one fits into the world. That you're not in a certain sense, we are on this earth alone, but we, we have to find a way of realizing that we're part of the greater world. And
Well,
not
also lessons in love.
yeah, lessons.
Lessons in love. I
She
mean,
had
she
enormous
was.
capacity. She had great capacity to love, and such devotion, and yet what I think is quite marvelous is that her ultimate goal, as much as she needed to be needed and loved so with such intensity, her goal was for me to become independent and to be on my own and to get into college. That was the immediate goal, which did not look likely at all. But to get into college and then be an independent, strong person. That was the goal. It was never to be, that I should be with her, for eternity. No, she was not that kind of lady.
I found it interesting. Again, I found so many parallels. I can't even, we'd be here for 5 hours. Yeah, so many. Because I was not a great student, but I had a teacher who, this was way before anyone understood ADD, who said, Billy's really smart. And when I went to junior high, they put me in a lower division. And they said, you have to put him in the honors division. They said, but he'll get C's. She's like, he's going to get C's in the lower division. He needs a challenge. And better he should be an average honors student than an average, slow student. And that was revolutionary in the 70s. And you said something that you really didn't understand, how you could go to summer camp and be lauded for your writing and then come back to school and be said, yeah, he really doesn't have anything to say. He's not a great writer.
I was invisible in school. And yet, other people, I was turning out full-length plays, but I was considered very, just kind of this invisible person. Not to be fit, maybe to be fair to the teachers, if you're not presenting this material to them, fuck them. They should have known. They should.
But that's what I'm wondering. Was Aunt Lil one of those people who had that really? She saw that in you.
Well, she knew me better than everyone. She knew me from birth, and when I was so young, I was showing that I had enormous imagination and creativity and saw things in a special way that entranced her. She really was so enraptured with my creativity that it was a mutual, we benefited mutually. It would be facile to say that it's just a one-sided thing, though, this lady who just devoted herself to this troubled child. On the other hand, I allowed her to be an artist because when I went to art school, I went to High School of Music and Art, which is it's a public school for gifted kids. And I draw well. And so I got in as an art major. But, everything's a problem for me. Screwing in a light bulb is a problem for me. Today, I've never learned, as she used to say, you have to learn the mechanics of living. I've never learned the mechanics of living, and I've always had some good friends who've basically taken care of me. After Aunt Lillian stopped, other people stepped in, and my friend Carl, who's going to come on later, is, been this extraordinary figure in my life as a director and as a friend, as kind of a son in some ways. And I have a series of people in my life who have enormous focus and concentration and love me.
One of the things your father... Oh, first, let me ask you, does anybody still call you Chuck?
No, and it's funny. I was named after my mother's brother, Charlie, who was killed in World War II. And so when I was born 10 years later, let's say, it was still very fresh, tragedy. And they wanted to name me after him, but to call me Charlie was too painful. And so somehow, I don't know who came up with Chuck, which certainly does not suit me, but that was my name until basically until I graduated from college. And I always thought it was kind of a silly name for me, but I kind of missed it a bit. I get a little nostalgic thinking that maybe, I wouldn't mind somebody calling me that.
Your dad did, he made one very large contribution to your life, which was he brought you to your first opera. And you saw Sutherland and Sonnambula at the Met.
Yep.
And you talk about this revelatory moment. And, Sutherland was not known as the greatest actress, but she had a presence. And I'm curious, what was it, the opera itself? Was it her? Was it the combination of music and theater?
I guess I was 8 years old, and it was the whole experience of, first of all, going to the old Metropolitan Opera House, which was the most extravagant Beaux-Arts, 19th century theater. It was, it was just this wonderland of gold, gilt, moldings and just chandeliers, and it was, you were in a complete fantasy land. And then the opera itself, with the set being this whole, Italian village, village square. All the artifice of it, and then in the center of this extraordinary figure, Joan Sutherland, who I at eight years old, I'm not going to know how much of an actress she is or she isn't, but the fact that she was this extraordinary prima donna, and the audience just beside themselves, with just her magnificence, and just focused on this redheaded, goddess-like figure. That, to me, that was what was imprinted on me. And one would think, oh, then he became a great opera queen or something. It wasn't the music. I mean, it was glorious being surrounded by the sound, but just the artifice, the theatricality, the architecture, the curtain, this, and all of our attention focused on this one lady, who's just driving everybody into a state of ecstasy. Never got over it.
Was there anyone in theater that had that same impact on you?
Well, a bit, much bit later, when I saw Zoe Caldwell, a great Australian actress who won 5 Tony Awards and created the role in New York of Jean Brodie, in the prime of Miss Jean Brodie, played all the great roles in Medea, and then played Maria Callas in Terrence McNally's Masterclass, her final Tony Award. And she had this bigger than life kind of Sarah Bernhardt grandeur to her, and she was a small, lady, but just, on stage, you were just riveted into this voice and this presence, and she was just magnificent.
There's a story. We're jumping around a lot, but this is what we do. That you had invited Zoe Caldwell to see you. What show was it? Was it Red Scare?
There was this play, Red Scare on Sunset. Now I'll try to do this in a succinct way.
I know.
When I was 14, I guess I was 67. I guess I was maybe 14. My aunt took me to see her do the prime of Miss Jean Brodie on Broadway, and things were very loose back then in the 60s. We found the stage door, and Evelyn kind of pushed me through. She waited outside, and it was after a matinee, and I found Zoe Caldwell alone in her dressing room, and knocked on the door, and she was very kind to me, this young boy, and I told her I wanted to be an actor, and she held my face to the light, and she said, "Well, you have the face of an actor. Of course, that means nothing." But anyway, years go by, and she said, "Oh, whenever I play, you must come see me," and I never did. And then many years later, I'd always fantasized that someday she'd see me in a play and she'd think that I was, worthy of her early attention. And I met someone who met her while she was teaching a master class down in Florida. And I said, "Oh, you got to give me her address." I wrote her a letter and told her about how I'd met her years before and always wished that she could see me perform. And she called me up and said, "I'm coming to your play. I won't tell you when." We were doing this play. Julie and I were doing Red Scare on Sunset in New York, and we'd had great audiences, big laughs. This one particular night, it's just dead, and I was of the mind in my 30s that with a dead audience, you just push harder, you do more, you be more inventive, more zany, more faces, and I was doing everything but sticking a cucumber up my ass. I mean, just anything to hook them in. And when the show was over, the house manager said, "There's a Zoe Caldwell here." And oh no, now she comes tonight, and Julie was there, and she came in. She's all in black, and she had black coal on her eyes, and she came up to me, and I was just kind of like, oh, and she put her hand on my face again, and she said, "You're so beautiful, but you're pushing, you're mugging and hamming it up. You're much better than that. I don't want ever to see you do that ever again." And she really lit into me, and she had been away from the stage for a number of years at that point, and the rest of the cast, I think, were wondering, who the hell is this strange lady who's really giving Charles a terrible time? And but to my credit, I just listened, and and then she. I said, "Well, thank you. Will we be seeing you on the stage again?" And she said, "No, I should never be on the stage again." And she fled the theater. And of course, a few years later, she did Masterclass and won another Tony. But thing was that I'll pat myself on the back. I wasn't like, "Oh, how dare she do that to me?" And I thought right at the time, I thought, okay, she could have very easily not come back at all. First of all,
right,
or sent me a note, or come back and said, one of those awful things like, you really did it, something that
that was something.
Yes, and it's so mean when I've had people do that to me, and they're just, really the hell with you. But she cared enough to really, set me straight, and it started me off on a 30-year journey. I'm still on. And we're going to do a new. Carl and I are doing a new play this winter, and I want to really try to apply these lessons from her of being true, and yes, you can do comedy, and yes, there can be a camp element to it, and theatrical parody, but doesn't mean you can't be honest and true and really, really be human. So I'm still working on it.
It makes me wonder, have the roles been switched? Have you ever seen somebody that you thought was talented who is going down the wrong path or not doing it? And would you tell them?
I don't think I've been quite as dramatic as, but there have been a couple times, I won't say who, but there were a couple times where I saw somebody who I thought was very special and like doing their cabaret act. And just think, oh, they're on the wrong, a little bit on the wrong track, and they could be so good. And you have to be careful because, But I think a couple of times I said to someone, who was that they had, I think it was a cabaret act where this person had memorized all of their banter, and it came up in a fake. And I said, I think that's what you're trying to do is you're making it very difficult for yourself. It comes off artificial, and I think that if you just write down talking points and just go over, do your banter in the shower and over and over till you're kind of got it down. But I think when you write cabaret banter word for word and memorize it, it seems stiff. I still my cabaret acts, I don't do that. I intentionally never write it all down. I write the first line down. I know where I start. I know where I end. And then in between, but I'd go over it many times to, okay, I'm talking too much here. Whatever.
It's interesting that you had the experience with Zoe Caldwell, and then conversely, and obviously much earlier, you had jumped in to help Charles Ludlam in a play, and you were criticized that it needed to be bigger. And you have to obviously match him and match the tone of the moment, obviously. But, you've learned these things from two giants, two very different rules and lessons.
Many lessons to be learned. Yes, when I was quite young, I was in my 20s, and I idolized Charles Ludlam. So, I mean, he was probably the biggest theatrical influence on my career as writer and actor. And at one point, I was kind of in his orbit, and he called up in the afternoon and said this girl playing a small role of Hecate, the goddess of hell, in his play Bluebeard, had a family emergency and left town. Would I come in, just rehearse with the stage manager for 5 minutes, and then do the show? And I was so young. And today I think, like, oh my God. But, I was young, and it was a small part. It really was just a handful of lines. And I had such nerve. I said, can I bring my own costume? Because I didn't really like what she was wearing. He said, fine, whatever you want. And so I rehearsed with the stage manager. And next thing I knew, and so I chose, since I didn't know what, I was playing Hecate, the goddess of hell. I kind of gave myself a kind of a Laudelenia sort of slightly European accent, and I was sort of singing with kind of decadence. Bluebeard, come here, come forth, Bluebeard. And I was very kind of glamorous Hecate. So next thing I know, it's the end of the play. I came on toward the end of the play, the climax. And suddenly I look on stage, and there's all this dry ice, and there's my idol, Charles Ludlam, who was extraordinarily charismatic, and he was calling me forth from hell. And I came on, and I did what I thought I should do. And afterwards, I got a lot of attention from the audience, and Charles said, "So that's very good, but you have to be bigger." So of course, next night I do it again. I thought I was bigger. He said, "I'm telling you, got to be bigger." Third night, I thought I was still trying to hold on to my, what I was doing, but make it a little bigger. And whoa, when we got off stage, he just pulled me aside. He said, I had egg all over my face. Who the fuck do you think you are? And fuck you. And I was so upset, my idol, that I displeased him. And when I was still living at home. I was living with my aunt still. And by the time I got home, I thought, he's just jealous. Like he would be me. I mean, really, that's so silly. But I was very young. And my aunt said, he gave you a break because he let me do my solo show as late shows as theater. Mm-hmm. You do exactly what he says. So I came back, and next night, and I was saying, "Oh, Bluebeard, you've conjured me forth." And he goes, "That's it. That's good." But then, years later, and I started thinking about it, and as I had my own, theater company, and people came in and out of my plays, I realized that what he was what he was trying to teach me, but he might have explained it, was just that an actor can come up with a very interesting interpretation and bold choice that doesn't fit the play. And it's not serving. You have to serve the whole play. And I was wrong. Because I was unrehearsed. I was coming at the peak, the climax that Ludlam had been building higher pitch. And at the end, Hecate appears, instead, suddenly Hecate appears.
Hello there.
So I was wrong, but it'd be nice if someone would just say, maybe we should rehearse for 5 minutes before, and I'll explain to you as an older person who's who is such a great artist. I'll explain to you why you're taking the wrong approach. But anyway,
was there ever any feeling from him that, like, who the hell is this young guy coming up doing similar things?
Oh yeah, it's still around years after his death. No, I when we did Vampire Lesbians of Sodom, when we opened it off Broadway, he and Everett Quinton, his partner, came to the show, and he was very nice afterwards, very nice. But then later, it wasn't until after his death, many years later, there was a biography, very fine biography written about him. And in the biography, I read it and said, that Ludlam was very, very angry that I had somehow appropriated his style. And I was enormously influenced by him, enormously. And I would have felt, absolutely the same as him. I would have been very upset. I like to think that over the next 4 decades that I've found my own voice, but I'm still, he was the kind of the father of, he created this form of theatrical parody and drag and all that, and I, I'm part of his. Let's say that I'm part of the lineage
Was there ever an opportunity or an interest in doing a Ludlam play like Irma Vep or something over the years?
No, I wouldn't do that. However, maybe I don't know. I get so confused about how many years go by. Is everything now in the last few, particularly with COVID, everything is so screwed up now. I can't tell if something was 4 years ago, 7 years ago. I don't, whatever it was.
Or last week.
Not that many years ago. There's a very fine theater in New York City called the Red Bull Theater, and Everett Quinton had a relationship with them, and they do they do full productions, but they do a lot of one night events. And so I was talking to Jesse Berger, the artistic director, about doing something with them, and I said, well, I'd love to do one night reading of Charles Ludlam's adaptation of Camille, which I'd seen him play many times, and I said, since Everett is involved, maybe he could direct the reading, and so I've remained friendly with Everett in a certain way. We lived in the same neighborhood. So anyway, so Everett thought it was a great idea, and of course I call him up after he agrees to do it. I got such nerve. I said, Everett, since it's a reading, don't you think maybe we should put some cuts in? It's a little long, and some of that stuff is all visual, that maybe we should just cut that out. And I'm saying this to the widow and the keeper of the flame, and he said, no, it doesn't need cuts. He said, but Charles, this time you're going to have to really act. You can't just camp it up. I thought that was fabulous.
And then click.
That was just great. That was great.
You've been asked this, in earlier interviews. I saw some interviews with you from like 30 years ago. Really, it's extraordinary. And so, I want to ask you from this vantage point in your life, with all the highs and the lows, is there anything that you would have changed?
It sounds sort of phony for me to say no. But there's nothing I would have
changed. I mean, everybody does at a certain age. I think younger people would change things, but I think in an older, although in the earlier interview, you said no then as well.
No, I don't. I mean, I've really had the career that I wanted to have, and I didn't have. I've tried sort of more commercial work. There was a period in the 90s where I had high-powered agents at William Morris who wanted me to get into television, and I didn't particularly, but it was so intriguing to have an agent and interested in me, that I played along, and I pitched all these series ideas to HBO and Showtime and CBS, and I'm a great. I think I inherited the salesman gene from my father, and so I got a deal.
You got paid for them.
Every single time I went into some big office, I came out of there with a deal. I mean, I couldn't believe it, but it also maybe because I didn't care that much, so I wasn't sweating or, oh God, this has got to happen. I was sort of amused by the whole thing, but then, ultimately, nothing was ever shot. What I think what I delivered wasn't as good as what I pitched. And
But was there anything in your life now that you've written it down that you said, oh, I think I would have been just as happy or happier had this not happened?
No, it's all. I know it sounds. I really wish I could give you an intriguing answer. I think there are a couple times there are times I wish I hadn't responded to things so intensely that.
But even that you learned something from.
Yes, or I wish there are times, that I wish I'd been a little nicer, that I'd been more thoughtful, that I'd anticipated other people's needs more. That that I'd like to, and yet I probably make the same stupid mistake again.
Well, it's interesting because you mentioned in the book there's a great we're jumping, obviously. People, there's so much in this book. I mean, I'm not even going.
We have guests coming.
Well, I know. That's why I got to move. So we're not going to Milton Berle, B. Arthur, Liza Minnelli. The story's fantastic. You've got to read the book. But apropos of what you just said, when you had a little theater company in Chicago... people, you thought, interestingly, you thought everybody's happy. It's a success. You're the leading lady. You're writing roles in everybody's voice.
Right.
And you think that we've got this great company, we're on this roll, and say, until somebody says, let's sit down and just all voice what we're feeling. And what happened, Charles? What were they feeling?
Well, my dream after college was to be like Charles Ludlam and have my own my own company and be the leading lady and write plays for an ensemble. And I met a group of people. I got a part in a play for a small nonprofit company, and we all got along in the dressing room. And I mentioned this fantasy, and they all wanted to hook on, and so we overnight had this little company, and I very quickly wrote this 45-minute piece, pastiche of old women's pictures, and called Myrtle Pope, and I played Myrtle Pope, and the other people played these roles, and it was a very exciting period in Chicago for me, where I it was just starting, and we booked this 45-minute piece in every kind of gay bar, pub, movie theater after the Late Show. And it was so exciting for me for the first time, to see that I had something to offer, and that these audiences, particularly gay audiences, were responding to me. It was just the most thrilling thing. But then I was oblivious. I didn't know that the other actors, particularly the actresses in the company, their ambition, because they had told me that they wanted to be in this kind of theater company, but then I guess they felt that what they really wanted to be was in a more traditional company where you do other people's plays and it's an ensemble, and that was never the deal,
Right.
So when we had this kind of encounter group, and they all the women, really, it wasn't the boys, the women are all just saying that this is all about you and your ego, and you wanting to be a star, and you're holding us back, So I thought, well, I guess I'm going back home to New York. and I says, God is my witness, I vow never to allow non-union actresses make me feel guilty about taking the final bow. So yeah. But then the great irony of my life is that how many years later? 10 years later, I started a little theater company with the exact same kind of thing, with a different group of people. And yet these were all people who wanted to play with me and loved having roles written specifically for their trip, I used to call it, and
right.
they respected me as that I was going to be the leading lady, and we all had the same point of view and the same dream. And then this miracle, and we really do consider it like Brigadoon, just this miracle that this little sketch that we did in this bar for 2 nights, Vampire Lesbians of Sodom, that it took off.
Mm-hmm.
And moved to a regular off-Broadway theater, ran for 5 years, and established us with careers.
And so that brings us to our first guest.
Great.
So Julie Halston, oh my God, is a wonder of all wonders. When I think I know everything she can do, I'll see her do something, I'll go, oh my God. And how did you two meet initially?
Is she coming on, or
yeah? Well, just you tell me how you met her.
Well, we had met in San Francisco. I was doing my solo act at this wonderful place called the Valencia Rose Cabaret in the Mission area, and on Monday night I was doing kind of like Tuesday through Saturday, let's say, and on Monday nights I'd kind of an open mic thing, or they would have special events. And Julie and I share a friend, Bobby Cohen, who was my friend in summer camp and her friend in college. And he kept telling us each about the other one. And, you got to meet Julie. She's the funniest girl in the world, which makes you think that's the last person I want to meet. And I think he said the same thing to her about me. So she was working on Wall Street as a corporate librarian, but she had fantasies about being a performance artist, and she had put together kind of a Spalding Gray kind of show, and she did it for one night on the Monday night, at the Valencia Rose. And I went to see it, and I didn't think it was very good because she didn't know who she was, and she was, she was sort of talking, with her voice, but like we're expecting a punchline, but she was trying to be Spalding Gray and just sort of telling these stories that didn't seem to be going anywhere. So I wasn't too impressed. We met afterwards. We weren't very impressed with each other. And then a number of years later, back in New York, I had the rare opportunity to do my solo material at this tiny little storefront theater, and it was just a disaster. Nobody's going to come see an unknown person in a solo show on a dark side street that nobody ever walks up, with no press. So I was desperate when like a bar rag would come to be coming to the show. Michael's Thing is coming to the show. I need an audience. So I called everybody I knew, and I found the name of this girl I'd met in San Francisco, and I said, well, I'll give you as many tickets if you could bring your friends, just fill up my audience, because I got the critic from the Villager coming. And so she brought like 10 people. She has so many friends to this day, and she liked what she saw, and then we fill it in more when she gets on.
She is that kind of person. So let me tell you, I had gone to see a friend of mine in a play on Broadway. Very small role. Although, as we know, there are no small roles. And this person said to me, there's this girl in the play that steals the show, and you would love her. So she actually said this somewhere else. So here's the introduction.
Woman, I'd have to tell you something. I've never had the privilege of being on stage with Julie Halston, but talk about Chaplin-esque. Yes. I mean, all of those cliches, scene stealer, showstopper. I mean,
scenery chewer.
No, she literally stops the show, which is hard to do in this play.
I can retire from show business. But what Elizabeth Ashley just said.
But Julie Halston getting up a staircase is one of the most brilliant things you will ever see on the stage.
So give it up for Miss Julie Halston.
Oh my God, I remember doing that theater talk with Liz.
Yes, our friend Liz.
That was so wonderful. And
I had no idea I was going to be seeing you in there. And I'm like, but that's Julie. You think, oh, it's Julie. But you were extraordinary.
It was quite an interesting thing, though, because we had just lost Nikki Martin. And
the director.
A lot of us were very upset about that because we all liked Nikki so much. And Scott Ellis was slated to do You Can't Take It With You, which of course is one of the greatest plays ever written. And they had James Earl Jones and whatnot. And apparently, I found this out later, Nikki, who was in the hospital, and Scott talked about it. And I think apparently Nikki said, you should have Julie Halston play Gay Wellington. And Scott said, oh, no, that we're thinking about that. And of course, I was like, well, I don't know what to do with that role. She's on for 10 minutes.
But she falls up a staircase.
Well, it was so brilliant, and I was kind of upset at first when I heard she was playing the part, because she played real big lead roles with me and other plays, and then when I saw that she's playing this part that just comes on for a few lines here and there, I was sort of upset because I her mentor, and I love her so much. But then when I saw it, she stole the show from all this extraordinary cast. What she did with but she had like a handful of lines. Every line she got a huge laugh on, and they weren't even it wasn't a comedy line. And then when she did this thing up the stairs, it was the most brilliant thing ever. Absolutely.
And what I should mention is that you had this great opportunity with Scott Ellis where you said, let me figure this out. Give me a performance and I'll give you a performance.
Yes. Well, what was so brilliant and why I love Scott so much, because he trusts actors so much. But in the first couple of previews, I still wasn't figuring it out. I still didn't know how drunk she should be or whatnot. And Sam Mendes, I love to drop a name. Sam Mendes said, Julieta, you should always go back to the text. Well, the text says she's drunk like a bottle of gin by herself. Well, if you're going to drink a bottle of gin by yourself, you're not really going to be able to walk. You really. And so I had a few previews and I really didn't know, I hadn't found it. And Scott said, look, Thursday night, there are going to be people there, important people there. I'm going to give you this opportunity, though, to figure it out. I'm going to let you do whatever the hell you want on stage. The only thing I ask is that you go around and tell all your fellow actors that you're going to figure this out on stage and that they should be prepared for anything. But you're only going to get this one night to do this. And I figured out that night that if I was that drunk, I would be on the ground and that I had to crawl. Because when you're that inebriated or sick or whatever, you crawl. And then I looked up at David Rockwell's set and I didn't realize that the stairs were that large and that high up. And I had to figure it out. And I had this great limerick to play with. And I started laughing myself on stage. And I looked down at Rose Byrne and Anna Lee Ashford and Reg Rogers. And they turned around because they were laughing so hard. And the audience, you know how this goes. The audience is watching the entire thing. They're watching me laugh at them. They're watching them laugh at me. They're hearing, and that was it. That was it. And then the next thing you know, I hear, and it's Scott Ellis running up the stairs. And he said, you're going to do that every night. You're going to do that every night.
Great.
Well, and as you know, Liz does not give praise lightly.
Oh, no. She's a trip in herself, obviously.
Oh, wow.
Liz Ashley. Yeah. Exactly. Gotta love her.
But speaking of your trips, so what do you remember from first meeting Charles?
Oh, I thought he was very aloof. I didn't really know what to make of him. I know my friend Bobby kept saying, oh, you got to meet Charles Busch. And I was like, he's not very friendly. On the other hand, I also knew that I wasn't very good. I didn't know what I was doing. He was right about that. I didn't even really want to do this. My friend Bobby kept saying, you should do this. We're doing a fundraiser. And but I wanted to try to be like a performance artist. I had no idea what to do. And it was only after I saw Charles's one-man show, Alone with a Cast of Thousands, that it was a revelation. And I have said this in a few interviews, that there were two men who changed my life and transformed it completely. And one was Charles and the other was my late husband, Ralph. And though I truly believe that I am successful today because of that.
Well, then, so if I could just tell the story,
of course.
But it's one of my favorite stories. Just so then, when I was going to do Vampire Lesbians in this bar in the East Village, and we'd had a wonderful lady playing we did two performances, and we had this wonderful actress playing the succubus opposite me, and she had enough of us after two times, and I wanted to do the show another weekend. and I needed another succubus, And so I every single actress, my sister turned me down. Nobody, somehow, I don't know why it seems so unattractive to say, well, we're doing a play. It's in a bar on the Lower East Side. There's no rehearsal, no pay, and no dressing room. And why people didn't jump at the opportunity. And the last one on the list of friends, and it was that girl from San Francisco. I thought, oh God. So I called her up, sort of hoping she'd say no. And she immediately said, oh yeah, I'll do it. I said, have you ever been in a play? And she said, darling, I played Nina in The Seagull at Hofstra. And I said, well, why don't you just come over to my apartment? Because my friend Ken Elliott was directing the play, was my roommate. And I said, it's not an audition. Just come over and meet Ken. So she comes over, this tiny little, narrow little apartment, and we decided it's not an audition, but we read a little bit, and she's so terrible. And so Ken says, Charles, can I speak with you alone for a moment? And we go into the kitchen, which is 3 feet away, and she can hear the entire thing. And he says, she's terrible. She can't act. And I was so desperate because then we wouldn't have to be able to do it at all at the play. So I said, well, she played Nina in The Seagull at Hofstra. Whatever. So we got the part. Then we rehearse a couple times in my apartment with this cast, and she gets worse. She's so terrible, and Julie's a very intuitive girl, and so finally she stops the rehearsal and says, "Listen." And and first of all, everybody kind of fell in love with her. Like, you kind of can't help it. When she wants to be horrible. And anyway, so she says, stop, wait a minute. She goes, I know I stink, but you put me in a wig in front of 60 gay men and I glow. And she did. She did. And here she is today, Tony winner.
Tony winner is right. Oh, we've lost her.
Oh, we lost her. We silenced her. But we should bring Carl out real soon.
You're silent, Julie. What did you hit? Oh,
can you hear me now?
Yes, now we got you.
Oh, sorry, darlings. Ken Elliott was our director, and Charles, and everyone else. I learned so much from all of them. They were all just fantastic. And, it was a great experience being part of a theater company. So.
Yeah.
But it's no Nina.
But it's no Nina at Hofstra.
It's so perfect, it really is.
Just to give people first off, Charles and Julie on Broadway was one of the greatest nights of my life as an audience member. Was it as great for the two of you?
Oh, one of the great nights of our lives.
Yes, it was. It really was. It was freaking-tastic. And people still talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
The pictures are amazing. I look at the pictures sometimes.
I have a bootleg video in L.A. I wish I were in L.A. But
it wouldn't have happened except for the gentleman that we have coming on, Carl.
Yeah.
Because, Julie and I have been, just daydreaming for years. Oh, wouldn't it be wonderful someday to do it one night on Broadway, Charles and Julie on Broadway. And it was never going to happen. And finally, Carl had enough of hearing us yak about it. And next thing you knew, he said, oh, we're all set. I went to the Actors Fund, and they're going to do it at the Music Box Theater. And now you've got to do it. And so really, it wouldn't have happened.
Well, while this isn't that show, I just want people to have a glimpse of what Vampire Lesbians is about. So just a quick soupçon of Vampire Lesbians.
You're the one that's been persecuting me! You've been obsessed with me for 2,000 years!
Yes. I'm obsessed with you. You made me what I am. Do you think I can ever forgive you for turning me into this thing that has no human feeling? This creature who thinks of nothing but her own survival, clawing and attacking anyone who poses a threat to me. Yes, I'm at the top of my profession, but I'm not so damn proud of it.
No, but that's not Julie though. That was her place.
I know, but we can't get everything. Oh, but you look a little bit like Margaret Hamilton in Wizard of Oz with this green hue.
Yes.
Would you do the show again, each of you?
Oh, well.
Under the right circumstances.
Yeah, under the right circumstances, I think it would be a scream.
Vampire Lesbians or Charles and Julie?
Yes. Well, either one.
Yeah, I think it would be, under the right circumstances, I think it would be a scream. I do. I think it would be great.
For
I always thought, and I still believe, that the Signature Theater, which does, sometimes they do a playwright's body of work, I still think they should do a Charles Busch run of his work. I still,
he's very prolific.
Yes.
Can I ask one question? Then we're bringing Carl out. Because it's not always fantastic and laughing and wonderful. Charles mentions in the book that there was a time when you had a little schism and that he was a little jealous of the opportunities coming your way. And I'm curious, how did you feel about that time?
Well, it was terrible in many ways. I didn't know how to graciously move ahead with a career. At that time also, I was married, and I was getting a lot of opportunities. And I wasn't very gracious about what we should have just done is sat down and talked about all these things. But the theater company, and I suspect a lot of people like Ludlam or Steppenwolf or theater companies that are born in a very sort of organic way with a very specific group of people, it does take on this strange family-like
dynamic.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You don't, and like all families, there's a bit dysfunction, and so I didn't know how to talk about what I was experiencing and what I was hoping for and what I needed, and I wasn't very gracious about it. And on the other hand, I think it was hard for everyone else because it was like, oh, yeah, Julie's getting a development deal and she's getting a big agent, and she's, this is a business. Let's just say it. Show business is a terrible business. It's a horrible, horrible, brutal, competitive, terrible business.
But we love it.
Well, we love it. But anyway. So and then the theater company was also, we had lost very big members. In the AIDS crisis, everything was changing. The dynamic was changing. Yeah. So it was a tough time, but I felt terrible. I never felt good about it. And then Charles talks about how he had this terrible heart situation in the book. He talks about it. And I got a phone call. I was in Colorado with family, and Andy Halliday, who was also in our theater company, called me and said, Charles is in the hospital. And I said to my husband, we have to go home. We have to go back to New York. And that was it.
And then we've had no problems ever since. But I wonder how many, 40-year friendships don't have some kind of a rough at some point.
Yeah.
But Charles, tell just briefly when Julie came to see you after the heart issue.
Oh, so after this, I had an aortic aneurysm, really nearly died. And anyway, I like a lot of people, I was plunged into terrible depression after my heart surgery. It happens to a lot. And so someone had told me that I should read Deepak Chopra's book, what's it called? I forget. Anyway, it's a famous book.
Yeah.
And one of the big chapters was to achieve serenity, you must stop passing judgment on people and things. And so I really tried. I was like, really
don't invite us over.
Don't pass judgment. I was trying to be, and it was kind of working, And then Julie Halston comes over, and within, she's like reading a magazine, sitting there, and within 10 minutes, she had passed judgment on about 37 people. Look at her plastic surgery. This one, she's doing a comedy. Oh, she's a comedy killer. This one, and it's contagious, So I start jumping in with her, and it's just like this orgy of passing judgment and criticism.
And it's fun.
And I finally said, "Stop!" I said, "Julie, you've set my serenity back 3 weeks."
Well, first of all, he's first of all, I go over there and he's like lighting candles and he has like incense things, and I was like, listen, I knew this guy for years and years. He had to have a fucking candle lit, and had, what incense? What is this? 1972? I mean, it just drove me crazy. And he's showing me a little box that this woman had given him. This woman, I'm not going to mention the name. And I was just like, she's a cunt. I mean, I'm sorry, but she's horrible. She's horrible. And he was like, don't say that. Don't. I said, it's true. And you know what? Andrew Reynolds and I always say this because I love to drop a name. If it's true, it's not gossip. If it's true, it's not gossip.
And we should point out, Charles, I bet you weren't depressed when she left.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't serene either.
Well, the serenity was the conduit.
Thank you. She's a serenity destroyer. But she was laughing. Maker's names. I used to also call her the Teflon comedian because everybody loves her so much that she can really be a cunt. And Julie's Julie, So I thought, she's a Teflon comedian. Nothing sticks.
Oh, all right. Well, now I have to go to Carl because Carl Andress. Now, of course, I don't have someone famous introducing him. Sure, you got Joan Rivers.
Yeah, we'll be the famous people. Maybe we're not.
That's right.
Well, exactly. You got Joan Rivers. You got Elizabeth Ashley. I'm out of famous people, but I've got the two of you. Charles, tell us how you met Carl.
Carl was a very young man who. Carl's the kind of person that can do anything, and he throws himself in 100% to everything he does. And he was, came to New York, and he was, I guess, ambitions maybe to be an actor. I don't know, but he can do anything. So I was doing a play called Swingtime Canteen, this 40s musical that I and Allison Fraser had been the lead, and then I took over after she left the show, and he was we needed a wardrobe master. And Allison was still in the show, and she interviewed two people. One was this older woman who was rather kind of dour, and then this young boy, Carl Andress, who had never done wardrobe work at all, but he was a big fan of Allison's, and he was very personable and charming. And Allison, being very almost like Messalina, said, "I'll take the boy," and so then that's how I met him. And then it was clear that he was this very superior person and could do anything. And he's grown into being this wonderful director. And I should also say that he's now the artistic director of a marvelous regional theater, the Sharon Playhouse in Sharon, Connecticut. And so here he is, Carl Andress.
Oh, well. Thank God. And Carl, I did not know till I read the book that I saw you act in Die Mommy Die in Los Angeles at the Coast Playhouse.
Yes, no, that was a great period. We were there from like May to November at the Coast Playhouse.
It was endless.
It was a really great experience. I loved my time in LA doing that show. It was wild. We had a lot of crazy experiences doing it.
Can I tell them the story about our fight?
Yes, Charles has fights with all.
Well, there's always a fight, Barry.
Carl, he was very young. I think you're like 25 years old at this point, maybe. And anyway, we were doing this play in LA, Die Mommy Die, and I don't know, we had a terrible performance where it was a dead audience and we had all these understudies going on, and I was just fit to be tied, and I behaved very badly on stage, and anyway, so Carl was very upset with me, and it was a 2-show day. We'd done a matinee. We still had an evening show to do. But we had a dinner break, and Carl wasn't speaking to me. So I went over to him. I said, "Listen," I said, "Kid," I said, you're going to forgive me anyway. So can't we just like edit it down and just forgive me now so we can have a nice dinner? And he said, "Okay."
Well, in fact, I met Charles at the height of the sort of issue between he and Julie, and I ended up meeting him
Oh,
this time at a benefit that they appeared at. I was helping Charles at that benefit, and I finally got to meet this figure. And I just immediately fell in love with her. And I said, "Tell me why we're not friends with the fun blonde lady."
I know, that was very sweet. He said, "Gee, I wish you would talk to her. She's awfully fun." And now Carl directs my big gala every year, Billy, for the Pulmonary.
oh, for the foundation.
Yes, and he directs it, and we can't do it without him.
Well, not only that, he's become indispensable to Charles as a director as well.
We've done how many, 25 plays now.
What was the first play you directed, Carl, with this troupe?
It was called Queen Amarantha, and it was sort of Charles really wanted to sort of step away from doing spoofs, and he really wanted to do a play where he sort of could embody a Sarah Bernhardt-like character. He was really wanted to like act in a melodrama without sort of kidding it at all. And so I was, right out of college, and I thought that just sounded great. Like we'd be really, very bam, very, we'd have a Ming Cho Lee sort of set, and we'd very avant-garde, and it's just so exciting. But I didn't have the history of sort of being in New York and knowing what Charles's audience was like, and so I was really, we were just really going for it. But unfortunately, we anytime we get a laugh, we cut it. So it was a rather dour affair, even though it was beautiful, and people who really sort of appreciated the effort really liked it. But most people thought, like, why isn't the wacky redhead being funny?
But we learned a lot, actually, because we were getting all these inadvertent laughs because the audience thought, it really seemed ripe for spoof, this historical melodrama where it's sword fights and all this sort of thing. But the idea was I just wanted to be a dramatic actress, and so they were laughing at wrong places, and I was devastated. I just wept. I was so humiliated. So then Carl and I decided to see if we could cut out all of those laughs that we didn't want. But you learn a lot about how to get a laugh by learning how to kill a laugh. So it's like the same thing. Like break up the line. Pause, various things, and it was actually very helpful in the long scheme of things.
I was very interested when you talked, Charles, in the book, that your first drafts can be much longer and that you like to whittle it down. You like the cutting.
I love it. My favorite thing in the world, what gives me the most pleasure, is once I have a script that I have something on paper, then just rewriting and rearranging and cutting, and I can just go back into the computer, into the document 4 times a day, and just change that word back, change it back again, go return it, delete it, bring it back. I realize I'm happiest not necessarily performing, but just when I'm really in the throes of writing something and rewriting. It's just, I can't keep away. It's an addiction.
What is that like for you as an actress, Julie? Do things change, and do you remember which version are we doing?
It can be a little tricky. I think I've gotten a lot better at it because of television. So on television, you have to be very facile and you have to be very fast. You have to speak fast on television, and you have to memorize fast, and they're constantly getting, things thrown at you. And I think that has helped me actually, even in the theater, because you just have to do it,
But when we do it in a play, though, actually with me, I don't really change much once we go into rehearsal. It's Carl together. Carl and I are doing all the changes before the actors get there.
And of course, we did a play. It's called The Tripping Artist.
I was just going to go there. Yep.
We were playing these rather disreputable characters. But that play, we found that we did need to put cuts in and do some rewrites early on. But Charles just didn't want to have to relearn anything, so he would just add Julie's lines.
It's true.
Everybody else's lines, because I can't learn anything new.
No, it's true. And at one point, I remember Jonathan Walker just said to me, "What the hell is he doing?" I said, "Oh, well, we're just shifting lines."
I remember seeing that because that was the first, I don't know, it might be the first time, Charles, that I had seen you play a boy role. And I know that that was something, and you talk about it in the book, the very important book, Leading Lady. Do you see? We're selling books here. When you talk about that, you had never really felt comfortable playing those boy roles on stage, and you wanted to find a way into playing that. Did tribute artists help that at all?
Not particularly. No, but what was interesting with that play was just that it was the only play I've ever done that where I'm playing a man who's posing as a woman. Usually, I just play a lady. But in this one, it was that kind of story, and yet I was never out of drag in the
you were
I was
at
always
the beginning.
I was always dressed as the character, but then I would drop the act, but I was still wearing the costume. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing that Carl and I figured out.
So you had told me during the pandemic, I don't know, years ago, that you and Carl wanted to make a movie during the pandemic. And the question was how to get it done. And this was also really at the beginning. We didn't know what was going on. How do you test? What are the regulations? So who came up with the idea of the Sixth Reel first?
Carl.
Okay, Carl, take it.
Well, we had an opportunity to work with the producer late Ash Christian, who passed away just before we went into production. So we finished the run of our play, The Confession of Lily Dare, on March 5th of 2020, and we found ourselves with a lot of time on our hands. So we ended up sort of figuring out what we wanted to do with that opportunity over Skype. And once we lit on an idea for the movie, we then sort of got on Skype for hours every day until we had a story hashed out. And we had an idea about trying to come up with a plot around a lost film many years ago, but we just got overambitious and the budget would skyrocket, and we just thought we have to come up with something a little simpler, which resulted in our movie, A Very Serious Person. But as we were developing it, I had such a fond affection for that play, The Tribute Artist. And Charles thought, maybe I'll play a male role in this movie. I thought, well, what if a version of Jimmy Nichols? And what if we have Julie play a version of her character? But what if because I really wanted to capture their stage chemistry in a movie so that we'd have it for all time. And so that was the goal, was fashioning a story where Charles and Julie could be funny and poignant and wacky and run around in costumes.
Well, that was always a fantasy of mine for Julie and I to be in a movie, like a zany caper movie where we dress up in wacky outfits and run around like idiots all over Greenwich Village, and we got to do it. Yeah.
I just want to show a very quick clip of Julie's entrance in the film.
Oh my!
I know, there's clips.
Helen, how'd you get in the front door?
It was open. Any indigent could have entered the building. Obviously, you're Jimmy.
Yeah. Helen, I feel we started off badly on the phone.
Forgive me if I was brusque.
Diplomacy is not my strong suit.
Oh, my. I've never been to Uncle Gerald's apartment. I had no idea he lived like this. I mean, all these boxes.
They contain his collections. Newspaper clippings, film and theater magazines. Some of them date back to 1905.
Is this drum really filled with old copies of TV Guide? It's a sickness!
TV guides from the 60s are extremely collectible.
Well, this is clearly a world I know nothing about. And I'm glad.
What were you expecting?
I don't know. Dorothy's ruby slippers, Marilyn's white subway dress. I mean, this is all crap.
If you were looking to capture the two of them, you captured them.
Yeah, it was.
This is all crap.
Let's see, there's some things. I've known Julie. I've been writing for Julie. I'm one of her writers. I've been writing for Julie for 40 years, and I know her voice so well that I mean, it's down. I've got it down now to what consonants to use,
It's
vowel
true.
sounds to use to to really get exploit her. So yeah, I mean, I really can write for Julie Halston.
Well, we made this movie in 18 days, and what was really made it easy was that these two have a natural chemistry and have been playing off each other for so long that their scenes just flew into place almost immediately.
What was the shooting like during COVID? Because you were in lockdown. Julie, what was it like for you?
Well, I must say, though, it was actually quite strange, but fun, because we were in lockdown when we went to our separate quarters, in this hotel. We could not eat together. Once we finished filming for the day, we went to our separate quarters, and it was almost like, it was scary. And we just were by ourselves. We didn't speak to each other. There was no socializing, whatever. However, when we got to the set, I think we were all so excited, to see each other, to do this or whatever. And, I love a crew. I love crews. And I love to make crews laugh, because there's usually such diversity with a crew. There's always a few lesbians. There's always a few straight girls. There's always, straight guys. There's always the gay guys. It's just so fun. Crews are great. And we had to remember Klein. I was always talking about Klein. And it was so fun socially because we could not socialize after the shoot. So we had fun doing the scenes and being together.
Well, we had 80 people COVID-free with our COVID team, 80 people COVID-free for the entire month that we were really all together. So that was a real accomplishment. But what was really funny is just sort of seeing Julie and Charles just sort of, because we had to be masked and double masked and shielded, the crew. We never took that stuff off. But the actors would show up and they would, be fully masked and everything. And then they get into the set to play an intimate scene. And, well, Julie, you tell them your response to that.
Well, at one point, I had a scene where I had to be in bed with Timothy Daly, and he was supposed to be performing a sexual act on me. And I had to respond, no masks, obviously, and whatnot. And I was just like, wait a minute. We're masked, we're shielded, and now he's just going to go down on me? And this is just crazy. I mean, how is this COVID responsible?
On top of that was, I'm co-director, although Carl really directed the movie.
Oh, right.
Anyway, but yeah, I just wanted to officially be able to throw my 2 cents in on everything. And Carl was very generous. But anyway, as co-director, so first, Tim Daly in this movie goes to bed, seduces both Julie and I to get this rare film that he's trying to, get a hold of. And so first we shot Tim Daly's in bed with me. And he's such a great guy. And it was just wonderful, being with this great guy, and he's so handsome. And then the next thing, he has to get into bed with Julie. I got a little jealous. I mean, it was like insane. I got a little jealous. So I'm watching them shoot the scene, and their scene is much more intimate than my scene is with them. And so since I was, nominally co-director, I went over to the bed, and then Julie's on one side, Tim's on the other. I said, Julie, I think, in this next take, I think you should play it for comedy. Not so sexy. Just play it for comedy. She said, get out of here.
Yeah. I was like, okay, yeah, get out of here. No, it was a lot of fun. It was really so much fun to make, and it was such a terribly strange time. We didn't know what was going on, but everyone was so responsible. Everyone was really, really professional and great, and clearly it worked.
Yeah, not only clearly it worked, but clearly you got to work because it was probably the only work most people did at that time.
It was October 2020 when we were filming it, and we had half the cast of Hadestown from Broadway. Suddenly, everybody was available.
Right
and willing. Yeah.
And since you mentioned that you both got to sleep with Tim Daly, there is one other little scene that I think sums it up.
You manipulated Blabbermouth into bed so you could weasel the truth out of her, and then...
Just a minute. I had every intention of having sex with Blabbermouth before I knew about the movie.
I appreciate that.
And then you contrived to climb into my bed so you could send me off in the morning on a wild goose chase for coffee and a buttered toasted corn muffin. To rip me off blind. You're a vile, despicable human being.
Call me whatever you like. Do you think that I would let a miserable bottom feeder like Doris Pang get her hands on the movie? To protect this film, I would sleep with a lot worse than you.
Well, on this one point, we must be clear. You did sort of enjoy it, didn't you?
You're not unappealing, but it was a means to an end.
Well, I feel placated knowing that you made love with me out of personal desire.
That was a cute scene.
Oh my God, it's so funny. It is such a great, finding two little short clips. I'm sitting there, but there's more. And what does it say about me that as much as I love Tim Daly, I really now want a toasted buttered corn muffin?
Really? I'm shocked and a little bit saddened.
Thank you. And a little turned on?
Yeah, the movie. Carl, when does the movie go out on streaming?
I think later this month.
I think October 20th, was it?
Was it October? Yeah, later.
Yeah. Well, we will definitely announce it in the column. I'm going to go around. Carl, is there a play of Charles oeuvre, as we say in the business, that you would like to get your hands on?
Well, I get my hands on most of them. So
yeah,
anything you haven't gotten your hands on at this point.
Yeah, really. We've sort of done everything. The next one.
Oh, okay. Julie, is there one that either you missed out on? And again, I have to have Julie on alone because I have so many questions for her, including how she felt with vampire lesbians and chose to stay on Wall Street but be an understudy. We'll get to that some other time. But is there something either that you never got to do that you want to do or that you would like to relive?
Not necessarily. I still think, it would be wonderful. There was talk of doing a movie of the Divine Sister, and that Charles and I really were sort of really hoping for that. That would be lovely. But no, I don't feel that way. I just, we have had so much fun doing all the plays that we have done. And I have so much, I don't know, just great memories of all of it. And no, I feel like.
Did you ever have designs on either Allegist wife roles?
No, but people have brought it up to me. But I've not had designs on it. Linda Lavin and Michelle Lee were just brilliant. I think I certainly think I could do it. But no. Good question. No, I haven't.
And we've done.
Charles?
We've also done. With most of the plays that we've we've done revivals or we've done one night readings of them. So we've done Lady in Question again. We've done Vampire Lesbians again at the Music Box. We've done Red Scare. So we've kind of had the opportunity a number of times to revisit, and it's been lovely experiences each time.
Yes.
All right. Well, we want to tell people the sixth reel is not out yet, but by the time you're watching this, it is probably available for screening. Charles and Carl, you're doing another play this winter. Can you tell us anything?
You want to talk about it?
Yeah, it's Charles's latest play. It's called Ibsen's Ghost, and Charles plays Henrik Ibsen's widow in the weeks following the great man's state funeral, and must decide what will happen with the rest of her life. And so I like to think of it as the Ibsen play that he never wrote, that's got a lot more laughs and a happy ending.
It's no Seagull, though.
Yeah, the hilarity ensues.
Yes. Julie, do you have anything coming up?
I'm actually starting rehearsal tomorrow with Matthew Broderick and Anna Klumsky and Ann Harada. And Chris Ashley is directing. It's Sinclair Lewis's novel Babbitt is being done as a play adapted by Joe DiPietro. And we're going to rehearse in New York for 3.5 weeks. And then we're going to go to La Jolla, actually 3 weeks. And then we're going to go to La Jolla around October 22nd. And I believe we open in La Jolla, California at the Playhouse November 7th. And we'll be there until December 3rd or the 10th of December. And it's politically more relevant than ever before. And we're going to dedicate it to Mike McGraw, who passed away recently. And he was supposed to be in it as well. And it's going to be very emotional tomorrow, but I'm excited to be, dare we say, in the room where it happens. And I'm excited to be back on a stage. And I think, would like to see this go to Broadway in the spring.
Fantastic. I have one last teeny clip, but Charles, I'm just playing to you for this one. But, we mentioned Tale the Algist Wife, which, of course, was on Broadway with Linda. And, oh, my God. And our friend Michelle Lee, who Charles jumped in and played with here, and Tony Robbins. But you did play the role eventually, Charles. Julie may not have played either role, but Charles, you did take on the Linda Lavin, Valerie Harper role.
Yeah, I think it was that in 2019, I think maybe. And yeah,
that one night, which was fantastic.
I'd never really fantasized about it. It was, my goal was to write a big role for an older actress. And but then Linda came up with this idea for the 20th anniversary of the play, that we should do a one-night Actors Fund benefit on Broadway. And
another one, see?
Yeah, another one. And again, it was her idea. And I assumed because she looks so great and she's so active that she would play her role. And she said, no, that I should play her role, and that she would play the role of the mother that Cheryl Bernheim had originally played, and Cheryl had passed away. And she put on her producer's cap, and she got all the rest of the original cast back, and Lynn Meadow, the director, and Ann Roth did the costumes again. And it was it's funny, like with a career, I mean, some of these one night events really are kind of the among the great nights of my career. If I, sometimes it's a play, but often it's just those special events that stay in your mind forever.
Well, you did play it one more time online, and I just want to share one quickie little clip.
Is this a Zoom or something?
Oh.
Lee and I were thinking of taking a trip together. Where would you go, on a cruise? I've never been to Germany. We were thinking of taking a boat trip down the Rhine. You're joking. You gotta be kidding. Not at all. You know how fascinated I am by German culture. I've studied the language. Why shouldn't I go?
Have you ever heard of a little thing called the Holocaust? Your father's entire family was wiped out in the gas chambers. I can't believe you would set foot on German soil.
Most of the time, I'll be on a boat.
Oh, you're glib. Your glib tone fails to amuse.
That was a wild period, though, during COVID, where suddenly it was like the early days of television. We did all these Zoom plays.
Well, yeah, and we should mention that was for Plays in the House and Stars in the House, which Seth Rudetsky and James Wellesley started. They actually got me to start this show. Julie had Virtual Halston, which was extraordinary.
Thank you.
And they're all online, and you really should do them occasionally still.
Yes, I should.
We just
People
don't have time.
They do stop me on the street. It's very sweet. They were like, You got me through. It's wonderful.
I
Well,
won the
go ahead.
Audition contest. Julie,
Oh?
your show. I won the contest of being able to imitate Mrs. Halston.
Well, I just remember because Seth had started doing it and said to me, why don't you do something? We've got to entertain people. They're sitting home with nothing to do. And even if it's just for an hour, that they get to laugh a little. And it also kept us sane. And Charles and I spent a Thanksgiving together because we said, well, there are people home who can't go to their family. Let's just do a show eating dinner and just talking.
Fun.
It was lovely.
Fascinating period.
Yeah.
It really was a fascinating period. Yeah, I mean, there were all those. Yeah, I must have done about 7 different plays on.
Oh, yeah.
And
some of them live forever.
And it really was like the early days of television because they started off really primitive, and then gradually we started doing them in costume and adding props and doing sort of tricks where, since we were shooting in different locations.
Well, Carl did that thing where you handed the script.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite things.
Very ambitious. And I think the last one I did, they had backdrops and all sorts of things going on.
We did a Die Mommy Die. It was
yes.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we could talk. Obviously, this group can talk forever. I want to thank everybody. Charles, of course, who's been here from day one. Julie, who I never could get because she was too busy. She was the only person during pandemic that was overbooked. It was extraordinary. She would just text me back, doll, I'd love to, but I got a show.
Yeah.
And of course, Carl Andress, thank you so much. Go see the movie, The Sixth Reel, when it comes out. Leading Lady, a memoir of a most unusual boy. Grab it. They all appear in it. And if you stay afterwards, Julie probably has to run, but if you stay afterwards, we'll chat afterwards. Thank you all for being here. This has been so fantastic.
Thank you. It was wonderful. Thank you very much.
And thank you to everyone watching. We will be back next week. I will announce it later. Thank you for watching Billy Masters Live. Of course, I have been Billy Masters. And as we always say, if we're here, we're live. Bye.